Oldboy is one of the most recognizable films ever made, and probably the most quoted Korean film. Its fingerprints are everywhere. Video games, music videos. That single-take hallway brawl has been homaged in everything from Daredevil to Nobody until it became almost a rite of passage for action filmmakers.
Korean film, it reinvented action and it really ushered in the new era of Korean cinema, which has continued to this day. They still probably make the best action movies in the world.
Quentin Tarantino was an open admirer. In 2004, as president of the Cannes jury, he helped push the film to the Grand Prix, the festival's second highest honor. And then, unusually for art house, it actually did business at the box office. So what is it about Oldboy? Why is it so much more than a revenge story? And is it really the defining film of Park Chan-wook's career? Let's get into it. Today, Korean culture is a global force. K-pop first and foremost. BTS has an army of fans worldwide. Plenty of people will point to the triumph of Parasite, but it wasn't always like this. 20-odd years ago, South Korean cinema was known, if at all, for one thing: ferocious, ultra-violent thrillers with a bold visual style. And Oldboy isn't just one of them. It's the one that set the trend, the trendsetter the others followed. It began life as an adaptation of a Japanese manga, but the finished film wandered a long way from its source. That's because Park Chan-wook didn't just direct it, he co-wrote it, and he reinterpreted a pulpy revenge thriller as something closer to an existential novel. And that comparison isn't a stretch. At university, Park studied the canon of world literature. Sophocles, Shakespeare, Dostoevsky, Kafka. You can feel all of them in here. The setup is pure Kafka. For reasons he can't fathom, a middle-aged man is locked away in a private prison that looks unsettlingly like a cheap hotel room. No charge, no explanation, no release date. 15 years. The literary roots show in the form, too, the modernist stream of consciousness storytelling where a tiny detail can trigger a cascade of memory. The film's central question even plays like a paraphrase of a famous passage from Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. And then the ending reveals what we've really been watching this whole time: a new version of Oedipus Rex. Like Sophocles' hero, the protagonist has unknowingly entered into a forbidden relationship with a blood relative, and, in penance, mutilates himself once he learns the truth. But here's the thing: Oldboy is not a film built only for critics and stern festival juries. First and foremost, it's a wildly gripping watch, a film that holds you by the throat for 2 straight hours. For Park Chan-wook himself, Oldboy became a laboratory of style, one you can trace through everything he's made since. Unconventional angles, split screens, double exposures, virtuoso transitions. The film is practically an encyclopedia of cinematic technique. Watch how cleverly Park stages a conversation between his 2 antagonists. He could have done it the simple way, just put them face to face. Instead, he keeps switching between 2 perspectives, roughly speaking, the objective and the subjective. The objective is all static, carefully composed frames, or, when they move, smoothly choreographed camera work. The subjective is handheld, often literally first person, and for extra realism, Park sometimes slips into a pseudo-documentary style. But he goes the other way too, building artificial, almost theatrical set pieces that deliberately remind you this is all staged. And that visual layering does something specific. It conveys the unstable mind of a hero who no longer knows what he is, a monster or a victim. For all the surrealism on display, Oldboy is shot mostly in a realist key. The world feels intensely physical thanks to obsessive attention to texture, from rain-streaked glass to brutal concrete interiors.
A병 손들어라.
In this film, as in Park's others, almost nothing is accidental. Even the wallpaper is patterned to resemble a maze, like the plot and like the hero's own mind. Oldboy never feels monotonous to look at, But Park goes further still, segmenting the film by color. The key colors are green, red, purple, and white. Take green. Normally we tie it to nature and growth, but here it takes on a sickly meaning, bound up with the hero's imprisonment and with the loss of freedom itself. Aggressive blood red is the color of passion and revenge. White, of course, signals purity. The film opens and closes on scenes dominated by white, and a faint purple belongs to memory. All of them combine in strange ways as the story unfolds. When the hero first sets out on the path of revenge, he's sitting in a red and green interior, a transitional moment in his evolution as a character. And he meets the finale in the snow, but with one shrill red accent. His journey is complete, but redemption, it seems, never came. One of the film's central motifs is time, announced right in the opening titles. The hero spends 15 years locked up and then has just 5 days to find out why he was imprisoned at all. That doesn't only set the tension for the whole story, it forces the storytelling itself to accelerate in places. Park is economical with screen time in general, speeding up or slowing down the action within a single sequence.
10년 동안의 상상 훈련. 과연 실전에 쓸모가 있을까?
And sometimes, he lets you breathe on mercifully long takes with virtuoso staging inside the frame. All of it so the audience can feel the moment alongside the characters. Which brings us to that hallway scene, where every blow lands harder precisely because the action never cuts away. The secret behind it is almost mundane. Park simply didn't want to shoot a typical action scene with choppy editing, so he found an elegant solution that the whole world now quotes, with or without good reason.
After all that, the only thing they're gonna remember is that god-awful dismount!
But the film surprises you on the level of content, not just form. For the first 90 minutes or so, Oldboy plays like a revenge story, yet it never really makes you root for its hero. From the start, Oedipus comes across as an unpleasant man and a pretty poor family man. Something shifts midway through, thanks to the anguished face of actor Choi Min-sik. Park leans hard on expressive close-ups, and the hero's pain becomes genuinely convincing. But even then, Oedipus can provoke something close to physical disgust. The real inversion comes in that shocking finale, where it turns out that the hero wasn't the one taking revenge all along. Revenge was being taken on him. And even before that, the film is hard to feel any one clear way about. But the ending pulls the floor out completely, leaving you stunned. On one hand, the circumstances are so horrific that it's hard to fully sympathize with Oedipus. On the other, the antagonist, Lee Woo-jin, is barely a straightforward villain. He had his own reasons to want revenge. On a visual level, Park shows us that the two men aren't so far apart, and that moral muddle pulls Oldboy back toward the best of existential fiction. Having to decide for yourself how to feel about what's on screen, that it seems is one reason so many people fell in love with this film. Park doesn't hand us tidy answers, and isn't that a mark of respect for the viewer?
괴물이 돼버렸다. 이 복수가 끝나고 나면 오데스로 돌아갈 수 있을까?
For all the universality of its central conflict, Oldboy also vividly captured its specific moment. The main events unfold at the turn of the millennium, when South Korea was still living with the aftermath of the 1997 financial crisis and moving toward democratization. Advanced technology was already creeping into ordinary lives, and yet the bonds between people were growing more fragile. Because what, in essence, is Oldboy about? Total isolation and the failure to understand one another. The characters are lost inside themselves and deaf to everyone else. Violence becomes a way to release the tension that's been building up inside people. A man who's lost himself, Oedipus. If he doesn't quite stand in for a country trying to rediscover its own identity, then at the very least he's evidence of a society coming apart at the seams. A dangerous loner abandoned to his fate.
내 15년을 고스란히 갚아주겠다. 한 개씩 뽑힐 때마다 1년씩 넣는 거야.
As with many foreign hits, Hollywood producers came calling, wanting an English-language remake. The director's chair went to Spike Lee, an idiosyncratic filmmaker with a visionary reputation. The American Oh Dae-soo was played by Josh Brolin, the No Country for Old Men star. Despite every favorable ingredient, critics tore it apart, precisely because, unlike the original, it had no emotional depth. The filmmakers interpreted the source material shallowly and added nothing meaningfully new. More than a decade after the remake premiered, it does feel a little over-maligned. There are some intriguing visual ideas in there. But on the whole, it's a telling example of Hollywood's habit of simplifying foreign films. A tense existential drama about fundamentally the meaning of life became, in Spike Lee's hands, just a genre piece.
Heaven make me free of it. The rest is silence.
Park Chan-wook himself has returned again and again to the themes Oldboy laid down. Dangerous family ties became the engine of vicious games in his later work. He still makes pointed films about Korean society. Last year's No Other Choice is proof enough. And the motif of an identity crisis is one of the central threads running through his whole body of work, from the vampire thriller Thirst to the erotic intrigue of The Handmaiden to the double-agent espionage of his Vietnam-era stories. Oldboy is the centerpiece of his Vengeance trilogy. Park is sometimes accused of aestheticizing violence, but that whole cycle makes plain that cruelty never leads anywhere good in his films. Oldboy matters for another reason, too. It set down the director's signature tone. He shouldn't be mistaken for a deadly serious author lecturing us about important things. Quite the opposite. There's a lot of comedy in his cinema. It's just that the humor is pitch black and often absurd. Oldboy is rightly considered one of the defining films of the 21st century. Not just exceptional Korean cinema, but a rare thing in general. A genuine crowd pleaser made by a director with a singular vision. The film helped make Park a welcome guest in Hollywood, though he never quite matched Oldboy there. And matching it really would be hard. This is cinema that ages beautifully.